The Black Death, the Plague, the Great Mortality. With death tolls ranging from 75 to 200 million worldwide, during the mid-1300s it wiped out up to one-half of all that stood in its path. In the course of human events, this is the pandemic to rule them all. And to think that it all started with this little guy. No, not him. The Tarabagan Marmot. It most probably started with him, that cuddly son of a bitch. See, this little rodent calls home the eastern steppe of Asia that encompasses Siberia, Mongolia, and Manchuria. China? No, it's not. While part of Manchuria is now Chinese, Mongolia is its own country. China! It's not that simple, and with Siberia you could claim that it started in Russia. No, I can't. Anyway, this marmot is known for two things. First, surges in population, and the second being highly susceptible to the plague. In fact, the plague in this marmot's population is epizootic, meaning it's nature's way of thinning an overabundant herd. Too many marmots? Plague kicks in. Most locals know not to mess with these marmots, especially any that appear sick. But a traveler through the region, say like the expanding Mongols in the 1300s, might have just seen a fuzzy, flea-ridden, handheld meal. Factor in the newly revitalized Silk Road, and the plague was on its way to world domination. But what is the plague? The plague, or Yersinia pestis, unlike many of the heavy hitters of history, is a bacteria, not a virus. It also comes in 3 different forms. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome our first strain. Named after the egg-shaped bulbils that form a few days after infection, it's transmitted by fleas that feast on marmots, black rats, and other rodents. The bacilli actually clogs the flea's gut, making him both insatiably hungry but unable to digest, meaning that the flea pukes out plague-ridden vomit blood with every new bite. Can you believe he's still single? Well, if you do hook up, you only have a 40% chance of surviving untreated. Let's meet bubonic plague. Strain number 2. He loves to travel, traveling initially from your lymph system to your lungs. Then you're in for 3 romantic days of violent, bloody coughing, infecting everyone around you. If you pick him and aren't treated, there's a 95% chance you'll die. Let's meet pneumonic plague. Strain number 3 is the bad boy of the bunch. This rarely seen strain is 100% lethal and ain't got time for your lymph nodes or lungs. It poisons your very blood, often resulting in the strain's trademark gangrenous hands and feet. Talk about a mani-pedi. And it kills so quickly that you'd be lucky to watch the Lord of the Rings trilogy between onset and horrible, disgusting death. Please welcome septicemic plague. Now, when the plague actually started its journey westward along the Silk Road is hard to nail down. We know of a mighty familiar-sounding plague that struck Yuan, China in 1331, announced itself at Izikal in the Chiaktay Khanate in 1338, killed Abu Khan, the Il Khan of the Il Khanate in 1335, and ripped through the Golden Horde in the 1340s. Not a great time to be a Mongol. Or an enemy of the Mongols, which was exactly the situation at the Genoan trading outpost of Kaffa located in the Crimea in 1346, and was under siege by the Golden Horde, a siege that for some mysterious reason wasn't going the Mongols' way. I do not understand. We're the Mongols, the Golden Horde. How is it that we can't take this city? Khan Janabeg, illness has cursed us. The men, they fall one after another. I know. I just hate how cocky it's made these Genoans. Hey, look, that must be Genghis Khan. That's enough. Fetch us a corpse. What? Fetch us a corpse. Golden Horde? More like old and bored. Am I right? That's stretching it. It's said as the Mongols retreated, they flung their own dead over the walls, and that brought the plague and plague-infected fleas with them. The siege was abandoned, as was the port. Fleeing Italians headed home with 3 stowaways: the plague, plague-ridden fleas, and their most notorious host, the black rat. It would be an awesome story if these ships from Kaffa were the actual vectors that brought the plague to the Mediterranean, but any ship out of the Golden Horde-controlled Crimea was probably just as toxic. We do know that in the summer of 1347, it hit the Byzantine city of Constantinople hard, killing a reported 90% of its inhabitants. As for the plague, this was a lot like going back to high school. The first recorded outbreak of Yersinia pestis was in the Byzantine Empire in the mid-6th century. Known as Justinian's plague, it killed upwards of 50 million people. Oh my god, I was just a baby back then. Oh, and what was I thinking wearing that? From there, it exploded into 4 directions throughout the Mediterranean, most famously to Sicily. In October 1347, 12 Genoan ships pulled into the Messina harbor. The diseased crews stumbled off, and the plague first set foot in Europe. Keep it running, we got other places to be. Very soon, the bodies started falling. A third of Sicily would die. By December, the plague hit Genoa, and another third fell. By the start of 1348, Venice was bracing for impact. Didn't matter, plague killed 60% of the people there. Florence, another half. And by the summer, the whole peninsula had been infected, and by fall, it was ready to obliterate the rest of the continent. And it would. But why? Why was medieval Europe so vulnerable? Well, trade had made the world more connected than ever, and this included Europe. As well as linking Europeans to each other and to the rest of the world, it contributed to a population explosion, one that the continent was at that point struggling to maintain. Crowded cities were steaming with waste. Hygiene was non-existent, as it was thought disrobing to bathe was to invite too much temptation. France and England were engaged in their favorite hobby, killing each other, as the 100 Years' War had begun. Lastly, with a great famine in the 1310s, even seemingly healthy adult Europeans of the 1340s had lingering underlying health vulnerabilities. The target on Europe's back was literally ingrained in their DNA. And in November 1347, the plague had donned beret, moved into Marseille, and started killing half its inhabitants. Didn't matter that the infected ship was immediately cast out. Heads up, Spain. The plague had entered the most populated country in Europe, France. It made its way to Avignon, which already had a noteworthy resident, Pope Clement VI, one of the most baller lifestyle popes in history. Ermine skins, lady friends. He owned a lion and a bear and scheduled Jubilee celebrations 50 years early because I'm the Pope. That's why. When the plague hit, he was powerless to stop it, just like everybody else. He would spend much of his time baking between bonfires, thinking that it would keep the plague away. It worked, mainly because fires tend to keep everything away, so...
You're a little confused, but he got the spirit.
But what did they think was causing the plague? Well, of course, divine wrath. If you subscribe more to the hellfire and brimstone Old Testament than the lovey-dovey sequel New Testament, wiping out half of everyone is completely on brand. Others believed it was a result of Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars conjuncting years earlier. Hey guys, do you want to give the humans the plague? What's a plague? What's a human? Some thought the air itself was infected, not because it had germs, because what are those, but because the air stunk, and this stench upset your 4 humors. Oh yeah, they still believed in that Greek thinking saying your body was filled with blood, black bile, yellow bile, and phlegm and needed to stay
perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
And it wasn't just Europeans that were at a loss. The Black Death was ravaging the Islamic world all this time, killing almost 50% of people in Alexandria, Cairo, Antioch, and Damascus. Just like many Christians, the pestilence and who got it was said to be God's will. Though the Islamic scholar Ibn al-Khatrib disagreed, arguing that research and observation proved that it was actually spread from person to person. He was strangled to death on charges of heresy. And if you caught the plague, what next? Enter the Plague Doctor. No, that's not him. This guy is a plague doctor, but like 200 years later. Your plague doctor might be a monk if they haven't already abandoned you yet. If you were elite like old Clement, you might have the surgeon Guy de Chiliac attending your needs, prescribing bonfires, and monitoring your bowel movements. Hey, it's a living. Most quote-unquote trained medical professionals would rather board up your doors than make a house call. Some thought this bad air disease could be canceled out by equally bad smells. So you might be prescribed to go huffing fecal fumes at the latrines. Bloodletting was always a good way to die while trying to cure yourself. But since prevention is the best medicine, you should probably just go ahead and kill the Jews. Anti-Semitism, or the discrimination against the Jews, was rampant by the Middle Ages. They had already been cast as the killers of Christ because, I don't know, What's a Roman? Relatedly, where modern Christians might dye Easter eggs to celebrate the Holy Week, medieval Christians would celebrate it with yearly violence towards Jews. And being excluded from most aspects of society also put European Jews in a bit of a pickle and established a stereotype that continues today. Hey guys, can I join your guild? Get out of here, Jew. Anyway, do you think you could loan me some money? Nah, the church won't let me charge interest, so there's nothing in it for me. I can do it. Huh? Usury? Yeah, Judaic law doesn't forbid it. Sure, just like those Jews. They control all the banks. What? You have literally shut me out of every other profession. Hey, Jew, come here. Yes, my lord. These people really hate you, almost as much as they hate when I raise taxes. So, I will make sure that you are protected, and in exchange from your little loan business, you will give me My lord, in order for me to pay that, I'd have to charge insane interest rates. Fine, just go join one of the guilds you're forbidden from joining. We have had it. We work our fingers to the bone, and for what? For you, the bishops, and the Jews to take it all? My friends, one of those things is not like the others. If you were to do something to those Jews, well, I have a lot on my plate right now and would be too busy to stop you. Just don't destroy his stuff. It's now the property of the royal court. So when the plague started to hit, Europe found yet another reason to hate its favorite scapegoat, often with claims of them poisoning wells and anti-Christian conspiracies. Pogroms wiped out entire Jewish communities. Pope Clement did try to step in. Hey, Adames, stop it! If you believe the Jews did this, you've been seduced by that liar, the devil. Hey, did the Pope just say something? I don't know, I can't hear anything over those fires. All across Europe, in a pattern that had already been established and would certainly be repeated, the blame for society's troubles would be affixed to the Jews. Meanwhile, France was in chaos. King Philip VI had fled Paris as soon as the plague arrived, and bodies were piling up in the city at a rate of 500 a day, necessitating mass graves. Now, if you were King Edward III of England, and you had been watching the plague obliterate everything in its path for the last 9 months, would you say, "All right, everyone, this is clearly a major problem that knows no border or allegiance. We must prepare and brace for it to break our shores"? Or would you say, "Look at those girly Frenchmen dying all over. Oh well, it's time to decorate my castle"? So 50% of England died. Plague might have come over via ships returning from the continent or in fleas living in the spoils of war retained through recent victories against the French. Either way, from summer 1348 through 1349, plague plagiarized English towns and cities. Now, if you were the Scots to the north, would you say, "All right, everyone, this is clearly a major problem that knows no border or allegiance. We must prepare and brace for it to cross these fields"? Or would you say, "Look at those girly Englishmen dying all over. Let's go over there and attack"? So that's how the Scots caught the plague. Across the Irish Sea, English transplants in coastal cities were also succumbing to the plague. Now, if you were the native Irish, would you say, "All right, everybody, this is clearly a major..."
Shut up! Let's go to the mountains.
And they did. And they were pretty much okay. All this time, the plague had been cutting its way up the Balkans and had reached Germany by mid-1349. It was here where the plague gave birth to one of its most notable oddities, the Flagellants. No, not the flatulence, the Flagellants. They sought to appease the divine wrath of God through atonement, aka going town to town whipping the crap out of themselves, and also by attacking Jews. In a time of death and despair, their morbid performances were the closest thing to entertainment. They would spread through much of Europe, but Germany was where they would see their biggest, most devoted crowds, especially where the plague had already wiped out most of the clergy. Naturally, Pope Clement saw this as a threat and issued another decree. Hey, those flagellant guys are evil. You guys never again enter into relations with them, capiche? Okay, but can we persecute the Jews ourselves then? Well, I don't really want you to. Hey, either you give us the flagellants or you give us anti-Semitism. Fine, you can have your anti-Semitism. Yay! As the plague spread east, one place Jews would be safe was Poland, where King Casimir let in all refugees. Poland, Bohemia, and Flanders would make it out of the plague relatively unscathed,
Idly hey!
only losing about a quarter of their people.
It's a miracle!
The Black Death had a considerably harder time in the colder, less densely populated lands of Scandinavia, and by 1352 it was playing its swan song in Moscow, having completed the least efficient route from Kaffa to Russia possible. So what did the European survivors do now that the plague was over? They f***ed. And then the plague came back in 1360. And then again in 1374, 1400, 1438, 1453, and again. The Black Death of the 1340s killed upwards of 200 million people. Yet still, it might have been one of the most productive events in human history. See, before the plague, the relationship between a European lord and a peasant was this. This will be the land you will sow and reap. Of course, you will pay rent and also work my land for free, and don't forget the tithe to the church. Hey, this is crummy land. Hey, this is a crummy deal altogether. Well, if you're not happy with this offer, let me show you where to lodge a complaint. Oh, fart. After the plague, so much of the workforce had died, leaving those alive in a very advantageous position. This will be the land you will sow. Hey, I'm gonna stop you right there, Chief. This land, it's garbage. Lord Jerry over here has offered me prime real estate, low taxes, and a company horse. Jerry? What do you want? There's like 3 healthy people left. With the extreme shortage in labor, many peasants saw their living conditions rocket up from deplorable to meh. This also translated to advancements in learning and technology. Knowledge of anatomy would be reassessed, which was a good thing since for over a millennium, it was all based on the Roman physician Galen, and he mainly dissected pigs. The use of quarantines to prevent outbreaks would become commonplace, and sanitation and health boards for cities would be created. Johann Gutenberg would introduce the printing press to Europe, an innovation that made its way over from China. What, nothing now? This device allowed knowledge to spread and put an actual Bible in the hands of many for the first time. Yo, you reading this? I know, man, there's some crazy stuff in here. Between the more personal relationship with God, the ineffectiveness of the church during the crisis, the ineptitude and debauchery of many post-plague clerical replacements, and the newfound appreciation for the fleeting nature of life, the path was paved for the humanism of the Renaissance and the splintering schism of the Protestant Reformation. The Black Death is the deadliest pandemic of all time. Its ceiling of 200 million dead is a record that will probably and hopefully never be outdone. It ravaged a hemisphere, and particularly a continent that had been spinning its wheels for centuries, giving just enough traction to get it out of the ditch of the Middle Ages and on the road to the modern world. It also serves as a lesson on what to do and what not to do during a crisis, especially one that shows us how small our world really is. Man, you really are the goat of pandemics. You tell me people still get infected by you today? Man, folks gotta stop eating them marmots. Well, it's gonna be a while before we hit the next port. We might as well subscribe to this channel or check out this video here, or we could be like these heroes down here that support Drone of History on Patreon. Yeah, it's all things we could do. Anybody ever tell you you look like a hot dog with pimples?